We have learned that Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez has died at age 58. He's been battling cancer for a couple of years. I feel like I have a little bit of a different perspective on this than maybe a lot of people because I am from Argentina. Most of my extended family is still in Argentina. And Hugo Chavez and other South American leaders are often topics of discussion. And it's kind of interesting because the topics, the perspective on Chavez is often very different in Argentina, in the sense that while there are many people who do think, who see him much the way that most Americans do, which is as a guy who, while you may believe that he kind of says what he wants and isn't afraid to say whatever he wants, that there's some significant problems in his country and that he has not been a force overall for good. At the same time, there are many people in Argentina who do have that kind of point of view, but it's very common in a way that I don't think is really casual discussion here in the U.S. to discuss Hugo Chavez and to discuss Venezuela. And knowing a lot of people who live there and have been there, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen here. 14 years Chavez was president. I think that one interesting aspect of the next couple of years, or even the next 6 months, is Venezuela was one of the few places that loosely could be considered an ally of Iran. And Iran is a country that also now is, I guess we could say, on the brink of escalating conflict with the U.S. and U.S. allies. And there was some plausible feeling that they had an ally in Venezuela now. It's not clear whether that will continue. It's not clear whether whoever is elected in the election to be called within 30 days in Venezuela will continue what is somewhat of an ally type situation with Iran, or whether they will not. I think it's interesting that in recently now we've seen the death of Kim Jong-il in North Korea, and now of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela, two of a handful of the leaders with which the U.S. has not particularly positive relationships. Now, the Wall Street Journal has reported, and it's kind of a conventional wisdom, that Nicolas Maduro will be the successor until the election is called, which will be within the next 30 days. And I think that one thing I do want to touch on is, for a lot of people don't know specifically, well, what are the problems with what's been going on with Hugo Chavez in Venezuela for 14 years? And I have here, I actually just received it. This is the Human Rights Watch World Report from 2013. And I've bookmarked where it talks about Venezuela. And if we look at each section, I think that this really tells us a lot of what the problems are. In 2004, Chavez and his legislative aides conducted a political takeover of the Supreme Court when it comes to judicial independence, freedom of media. The Chavez government has expanded and abused its powers to regulate the media. Human rights defenders. The Chavez government has intensified its efforts to marginalize the country's human rights defenders by repeatedly accusing them of seeking to undermine democracy with support of the U.S. government. Police abuses. Violent crime is rampant in Venezuela, and extrajudicial killings by security agents are a grave problem. Each of these is a section. I'm just reading the first paragraph, the first sentence, which kind of sums up. Prison conditions. Venezuelan prisons are among the most violent in Latin America. Labor rights. The National Electoral Council has the power to organize and certify all union elections, violating international standards that guarantee workers the right to elect representatives in full freedom. And key international actors. Venezuela has increasingly rejected international monitoring of its human rights record, rejecting binding rulings of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. So on every aspect, key international actors, labor rights, police, prisons, human rights, freedom of media, and judicial independence, Human Rights Watch's latest report shows why we have serious problems in Venezuela. And the most interesting question for me now will be, after the initial reaction to the death of Hugo Chavez subsides, what is going to happen with every one of those aspects, which really is about what should be most important for any government, which is the people living in that country.